back like we never left. It's Double Move Sports. I'm Big Baby Stef. I'm here with the fantasy phenom, Alex Lotz. And shout out to everybody who's been rocking with us in the Discord, who's been in the comments, throwing in their own takes, watching the episodes. It's been an absolute blast. We're going to keep it moving this redraft season, and this time we're going to mix it up. You guys have seen us try some different strategies with the classic 12-team PPR single QB league. We're going to do a 14-team league draft right now. Shout out to everybody in 14-team leagues, all the sweaty waiver grinders that are looking at names that you've never even heard of half the time on the waiver wire are playing in these 14-team leagues. And just to make it harder on ourselves and have more fun with this thing, we decided why not draft from the turn. So Alex is going to be drafting from the 101. I'm going to be drafting from the 14th pick. And we'll see how these rosters break down. Part of this is experimenting, throwing our 2 cents in the ring on some of these players where the tough decisions are. But Alex, you ready to get into this thing?
I am, and we'll set the stage. So you said 14-team. We're on the turns. This is 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 2 receiver, tight end, a flex, and 6 bench spots. Full PPR draft. So let's hop in. And Steph, you and I have our biggest, longest running home league draft this weekend, and it is a 14-teamer. So we are picking in spots that hopefully don't give away our strategy too much. Shout out to all the guys in Sunday's finest league that might be watching this video, trying to get some of our best sleepers and breakouts. But it's time. It's time to hop in to our home leagues, and now we're going to start evaluating rosters, start thinking about trades, and start thinking about these week 1 streams. So I'm on the clock first, and I actually am pretty torn with the 101. I think for the longest time, JT has been kind of the consensus 101 in these leagues. But I'll be honest with you, I'm starting to feel like Christian McCaffrey is the right pick at the 101 in PPR leagues, just because I think there is JT's a safer pick. He doesn't have the injury history. He's younger, absolutely dominated last year. He's got a good offense. But Christian McCaffrey, if he stays healthy, if he and JT played the same amount of games, I think there is no chance in a PPR league that Christian McCaffrey is not the number 1 running back if he stays healthy this season. So I'm going for upside in these leagues. I'm trying to win. So with that upside in mind, I'm just going to go ahead and take Christian McCaffrey at the 101. It hurts me as a Colts fan. JT is my boy. Absolutely love him. But I'm going to go CMC at the 101. And I will say, if this was my actual league and this wasn't a mock draft, it would be even harder to take CMC at that 101 spot, knowing what he's done the past 2 seasons and burn people with injuries. But I just think it's the right pick to make if you really want to shoot for that upside.
Yeah, 100%. And before we jumped in and started showing the draft board, we even talk about some of the differences like we do every year in a 14-team league versus a 12-team league. Certainly the depth down the draft board is going to matter a lot more because there are more teams, there are more players taken off of waivers and put onto benches. But running back depth dries up super quick. And so what you're going to see is very similar to the draft board that we're seeing on Fantasy Pros. Fantasy Pros does have some suspect ADPs. When we run these mock drafts, we have yet to find a better user experience. Certainly, if you know of one, let us know in the comments down below. But usually you're not going to see a Stephon Diggs or Devontae Adams make it to the turn, and we did see that here. But I actually don't think that's completely unreasonable in a 14-team league. A lot of these leagues will have keepers where the top 14 running backs are pretty much already off the board to start the draft. And, oh, my goodness, you guys are going to give me Jamar Chase here at the turn. I almost want to go 0 RB and go Chase Diggs to start this off. But knowing how quickly this RB depth is going to dry up and also seeing the RB thirst is causing me to pivot. And so seeing that there's a guy in the last really name in this tier that I love before we get into some of the older names or guys that are projected at least from week 1 to have a split backfield like a Javonte Williams, even like a Nick Chubb or Ezekiel Elliott, but DeAndre Swift is still there. And everyone who's watched this show knows that I love Swift. I was all over him last year. The Lions were in a horrible situation as far as being in all these shootouts last year, losing game scripts. Swift absolutely ate from that, and he absolutely balled out last year, even though Jamal Williams was starting over him at times, but he wasn't passing a 40% snap share. Once the game actually picked up and they had to get Swift involved, they weren't putting Jamal Williams back out there too much. So I'm going to go with an easy Jamar Chase smash. I don't even think I need to drop takes on Jamar Chase. And then I'm going to go DeAndre Swift at this 201.
I love it.
And feel really, really good about the start of this draft. Now, one thing, Alex, we need to talk about, you and I typically like the robust RB strategy, but in 14-team leagues, I think you have to focus on that less, especially when you're drafting at the turn, because you have the ability to start these runs. Once we get into later parts of the draft board where we're hitting that Tony Pollard, Chase Edmonds type range, where there's really only a few guys in that dead zone that you and I even want to have on our rosters, drafting from the turn here, you can start those runs. You can start QB runs. You can start tight end runs. And so you either want to be at the back end, grabbing the last guy in a tier, or early, grabbing the first name in a tier. And after I drafted Jamar Chase and DeAndre Swift, we saw a lot of receivers go in the second round, and that's something you do see a lot. I know Ezekiel Elliott was a name you were probably considering there at that 212. You got sniped on him. And knowing that you have McCaffrey, all right, shout out to the league that you just talked about. I have McCaffrey as my keeper, taking up my first-round pick. So I love the build. I love the fragility because you're shooting for maximum upside, and you're right. McCaffrey has done things that we've never seen from Jonathan Taylor, from a fantasy points per game perspective, from a target share perspective. And they really didn't do a ton in Carolina to make me feel like they're going to try to move away from McCaffrey. We have Matt Rule essentially coaching for his job right now. I feel like he's going to want to run McCaffrey into the ground with Baker Mayfield leading the offense. And we've seen Mayfield be productive and efficient in the short, quick passing game, targeting Kareem Hunt, even targeting Nick Chubb before Hunt was there. So CMC at the 101, who are you going with at this next turn?
This is tough. Yeah, I was hoping Zeke would get there. And honestly, first, Steph, I want to say I am really intrigued by what you did at that turn. I think it is so challenging in a 14-team league to see Jamar Chase and Stephon Diggs there and to pass on one of those two, because that would have been like, if I was in your shoes, I would have just taken the easy way out and taken those two stud receivers. But when we get back to, let's circle back on what running backs are left to see who your RB1 would have been, because I actually do think you did the right thing. So well done by you. But with me on the clock, I have CMC, kind of similar situation to you. I have one running back, but I don't want to go 2 picks here without taking another one, because then I have a really long wait until it gets back to me. So I know one of these 2 picks is going to be running back. Probably not going to go super robust RB here. I'm probably going to try to take one of these upside receivers as well. But one name on the board sticks out to me, so I'm going to go ahead and lock him in first. It is T. Higgins from the Cincinnati Bengals. Some people will say he's the number 2. If you look at last season, I mean, from weeks 8 through 18, T. Higgins averaged 17.4 fantasy points per game. Jamar Chase averaged 15.8 fantasy points per game. So for the back half of the year, so I know Chase was a rookie, took him a while to get ramped up, but if we start in week 8, T. Higgins was actually 1.5 fantasy points per game better than Jamar Chase. So I think I'm getting, diet Jamar Chase here at the 214, Jamar Chase light, if you will, in T. Higgins, who I think could end up being the more productive guy. Not saying I'd bet on it, but there's a chance that T. Higgins ends up the most productive Bengals wide receiver this season. So I will lock him in. And then if I look at the running back spot, it's really between James Conner, Travis Etienne, and Breece Hall for me. I know I have Christian McCaffrey on my roster. Man, this is tough.
Alex, I've done this a lot, okay? Let me just tell you, there's 2 ways you can go about this, right? You can get that running back right now before you hit the dead zone, or you could just say, look, I'm going to commit to having a flex spot taken up by a wide receiver, but it's a dominant wide receiver, right? You'll be flexing a guy like a Brandon Cooks, because you're not going to be wanting, at least I'm not, to settle with like Josh Jacobs taking him a half round above ADP. I don't want to have to reach on a Kareem Hunt or a Chase Edmonds. Maybe if they fall, sure. But typically in this type of build, I've gone ETN for that double pass catching upside type of play. Zeke is sometimes an option here at this slot. But I'm telling you, if you wait on running back, you're not going to like any other names here.
Yep. Yeah, James Conner is tempting. James Conner, it's really between James Conner and ETN. I love Breece Hall, but I would prefer both those guys over Breece Hall, just with Breece being a rookie. That offensive line's getting banged up. There's going to be some swirl at the quarterback position with Zach Wilson, hurt to start the season. So it's between Conner and Etienne, and they couldn't be more opposite. Conner is like this old veteran who, if he holds up, should be super productive on Arizona. Etienne hasn't played an NFL snap in a real game, and now James Robinson's looking like he could actually be ready for week 1. So, man, I'm going to go – I might surprise you here. I'm going to go James Conner. I'm going to go with 2 guys that are On paper, going to be mega producers. Both are going to have injury risk. Both are going to have volatility with their age. But I'm just going to lock in a guy on a good offense with a secured workhorse role in Arizona and try to get off to a hot start in my season with both McCaffrey and James Conner at the running back spot.
And it seems like every year James Conner is that name that's gross. You don't want to take him, but he somehow always finds a way to produce. I would have gone ETN easily over Conner there, but if you look at his situation, it's fantastic, and he's coming off a year where he was fantastic as well. Down the stretch, winning people leagues last year. As much as fantasy gamers hate to hear it, James Conner was a league winner in 2021.
RB5, and now Chase Edmonds is gone, and they didn't really replace him with anyone with that kind of talent. The
question becomes, do they trust Conner to be that 3-down workhorse throughout the entire season based on the contract extension that they gave him? On paper, yes. We'll see if anything happens with Benjamin breakout. They signed Darrell Williams. Who knows if any of these guys make the final roster. Then Keontae Ingram that they drafted, I believe it was the 6th round of the NFL draft. An upside, super deep rookie running back that you and I like. But that was before they brought Darrell Williams in. So I don't know what we can expect from Keontae Ingram or any of these other guys, honestly. So James Conner is in a clear position, just like Christian McCaffrey. So I like where you're going with, hey, I'm just going to grab these running backs that we project to have volume, scoring opportunity, pass catching work right off the bat from week 1. Now, after you took Conner, we did see our first 2 quarterbacks go off the board, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. We'll take a look at who else is there, but unfortunately the names at receiver that I was hoping for, such as Mike Williams, Cortland Sutton, A.J. Brown, are taken off the board. And wow, what an absolute steal by Team 9. Shout out to Team 9, getting A.J. Brown at the 309 behind Deontay, behind DJ Moore. And this is interesting because I have the upside shot last name in this tier that you'll see going in this range on Underdog is Breece Hall. Plenty of good receiver options available. And so I'm probably just going to pick my favorite from each. Continue to go with this balanced roster approach. I feel confident enough in myself as a drafter that I can wait at quarterback, I can wait at tight end, and I don't need to be the guy starting those runs just yet. I'd rather hit those positions where you need more of that depth, especially in a 14-team league where waivers are more saturated. So I'm going to make some easy calls, at least I believe, with Breece Hall. Last name in a tier. Essentially, if you look at Breece Hall as a prospect, very comparable to Jonathan Taylor. Similar athleticism, similar size. He's in a situation where there is a pass-catching back that's going to be taking up some volume of the backfield, whether it's to start the year. Maybe Breece Hall starts it with a 40% snap share, 50% snap share, and Michael Carter's still in there. But we're projecting by the end of the year for Breece Hall to be that DeAndre Swift rookie year, that J.K. Dobbins rookie year, that Jonathan Taylor, Javonte Williams rookie year, where they just go nuclear in the back half and take over. All right, and even though the situation's gross, who cares? McCaffrey's in a gross situation. You took him 101. Travis Etienne's in a gross situation in Jacksonville. DeAndre Swift's in a horrible situation where these offenses are not elite scoring offenses, but these running backs are in situations where they're going to absorb all this volume, especially through the air. So I'm going to go Breece Hall. And I'm going to go for an upside number 2. Let me check my roster real quick first. Okay, so we are going to go Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson is a guy I'm extremely high on this year. And look, it's kind of a campy take to throw out there, but very rarely, if ever, has the guy who finishes the wide receiver 1 repeated the next year, right? So statistically or probabilistically, Cooper Kupp should not be the wide receiver 1 in 2022, either because of regression from him or somebody else taking over that wide receiver 1 chair. All that being said, Kupp, I think, is still going to dominate, but you have A-Rob playing that Odell Beckham plus role in LA that we saw be extremely productive. We know Stafford loves to air it out, and now he gets that big body alpha X who can play on the outside, score touchdowns, and I'm projecting 1,100 plus receiving yards for A-Rob this year. The real question with A-Rob is, what was that year last year in Chicago? That's really the one concerning red flag for A-Rob, and I'm willing to take the gamble at this ADP.
Yeah, I love the pick. So after A-Rob, we saw Herbert, Jalen Waddle, Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin, George Kittle, DK Metcalf, Brandon Cooks, Waller, Dalton Schultz, Lamar Jackson, Josh Jacobs, and Jerry Jeudy go off the board.
Only one running back.
Yeah, and if you know, and this is it, Steph. Like all the drafts this year, I've just seen an overwhelming amount of them with teams going RB early in 2 of the first 3 rounds, and then you take your receivers around 4, 5, 6 because the values are there. And if you end up trying to go 0 RB or wide receiver heavy early, or you take a quarterback or a tight end, you really get stuck in these middle rounds having to take, a J.K. Dobbins and A.J. Dillon and Elijah Mitchell as your RB2, which I'm not saying I don't like those players. I certainly do. But more so for me, later in the draft, maybe late round 5 into round 6, not into round 4 in some of these leagues. So I'm honestly a little bit disappointed. A lot of the receivers I was hoping would fall to me as my wide receiver 2 went off the board. Was really hoping Jerry Jeudy would get to me. That was going to be an easy smash pick, and he, of course, goes right before me. So I'm not looking at quarterback yet. I think there are still several I like. At this point, I'm just going to punt the tight end. I'll take if Waller, Schultz, Kittle, or Kyle Pitts even falls to like an extreme value, like a round later than their current ADP, I might consider them in round 3, 4, 5, maybe 6. But if they go at their current ADP, like I'm just out on those guys. So I'm going to wait at quarterback and tight end at this point. So I'm really looking to fill out that wide receiver spot and then maybe take a third running back as well. So when I look at the board, let's see what we got here. So at receiver, we got Hollywood, who I do like, but I do already have James Conner. So that's, kind of crippled me. I don't want too many Cardinals right off the bat on this roster. Michael Thomas, Darnell Mooney, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Rashad Bateman. Ooh, this is interesting. Steph, I'm going to do it. We were just talking before the show about a player I like, an upside player that I've been rising on. And if he falls to me in the late 4th round, if I'm drafting in the 7, 8 spot, if he's in the 5th round, I'm going to take him. And it's Gabe Davis.
Wow.
I'm in on Gabe Davis. I was skeptical for most of this offseason. I thought, okay, on paper, the opportunity's there, the offense is there, everything's lining up. But we've seen, him play great in the preseason. He had a huge week in week 2, was on the field with all the starters, was playing all the snaps. We've only heard good things out of camp. So I think Gabe Davis is going to step up and have the breakout season we want to see. And if he does that, and he's a full-time receiver on this Buffalo Bills offense as the clear number 2, he should go absolutely nuclear this year. So I'm locking in Gabe Davis at the 4-14.
Wow.
And just calling my shot. So now I'm back with another pick. I could go running back or receiver here. In a PPR league, I'm probably going to prefer to fill my flex spot with the wide receiver position. But with that being said, I still think I can wait on the wide receiver position and get someone I like later. So I am going to go ahead and smash on another running back here. I'm not going to lie. Even Antonio Gibson is a little bit tempting at this pick, but I'm not going to go his way. I'm going to go with a super stable running back because I have 2 more injury-prone guys. And I'm just going to go A.J. Dillon for the Packers. They absolutely love A.J. Dillon. Even LaFleur is coming out and saying he and Aaron Jones are 1A and 1A in this offense, both being the 1A. So I think they're going to use both A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones at time. The offense is going to continue to be good with Aaron Rodgers. Dillon has showed he can be a pass catcher as well. So he gives you that week-to-week upside, that touchdown upside. And then if Aaron Jones ever does miss games, we saw them absolutely feed the rock to A.J. Dillon last season. So I'm going to have him as my RB3, a depth play, someone who can come in and give me productive weeks. And then if Aaron Jones misses any games in 2022, A.J. Dillon's going to be one of those every week starters. So I'm going to lock him in and try to circle back on my third wide receiver next turn.
Wow. I got to say, personally, I don't love the Gabe Davis pick when Rashad Bateman's there, Darnell Mooney's
Why is
there.
Rashad Bateman different than Gabe Davis?
Because he's going to be the wide receiver 1. He doesn't have Stephon Diggs to compete with. Now, I know before you say Mark Andrews, this and that, okay, I hear you. All right, and the volume is certainly not going to be there, but I'm just saying Gabe Davis, there has not been anything that you can hang your hat on outside of a playoff game.
But what about Rashad Bateman? What are you hanging your hat on with Rashad Bateman?
Because he was great out of college and was drafted in the 1st round.
That's fair. But Gabe Davis has done more at the NFL level than Rashad Bateman has. So
it's true.
The further into your career you get, the less that this draft capital and perceived talent coming out of college matters because we have more information and more of a sample size about who these players are.
I really look at Gabe Davis as like a Chase Claypool last year, where he showed some big plays. He had over 800 yards. The other scary thing to me on Gabe Davis, and I'm not saying it was an egregious pick by any means. I just would have taken other names over him that were still there. But when you look at from year one as a rookie to year two, I know they brought Emmanuel Sanders in, but he regressed in touchdowns, in air yards,
Barely.
in
It was
receiving
almost
yards.
equal across the board.
That's true. I wish we would have seen him take a step up earlier in the
that's
year.
fair.
He had that one big pop game in week 15. I think it was against the Carolina Panthers. So there's flashes, right? There's flashes. Same thing that we saw from Claypool when he was on the ascension side. And then I love the A.J. Dillon pick there, where you got him early fifth round in a 14-team league. I think is fine. And you're seeing the RB tier in this dead zone continue to dry up. After you took Dillon, we saw Elijah Mitchell, J.K. Dobbins, Antonio Gibson, Kareem Hunt, and Damian Harris all go off the board. There's a name here that I really like. We talked about, you don't want to reach when you're drafting from the turn, right? You're either starting a positional run like a quarterback run or a tight end run or a handcuff running back run with upside. Pollard is a name that's at this draft range that's interesting, where I could start a run there. But Jalen Hurts is essentially the opposite of that, where you want to be at the end of a run. And to me, Hurts is the last guy with top 3 quarterback upside still on the board. Maybe Brady can do it, maybe, right? But with Godwin coming in hurt, he's a year older. Evans is already missing time in camp, things like that. Doubting the GOAT historically has not been a good bet, but I still love the upside with Hurts, with A.J. Brown now infused into the offense. And I'm expecting big things from the Eagles this year. I think they're going to be making a playoff push down the stretch. They already made the playoffs last year. Hurts is fighting for that big contract. And then Rashad Bateman's still on the board. And so if I can get a guy who was phenomenal in college coming out, you and I comped Rashad Bateman very closely to Stephon Diggs. So Stephon Diggs in a Ravens offense, it's not going to be the most voluminous situation of all time, but who's the number 2 in Baltimore? Or I guess number 3, number 2 receiver? Is it Devin Duvernay? Is it James Proche? I don't know what to think about behind Bateman on the receiver depth chart, which makes me very confident that it's going to funnel through Andrews and Bateman, which we've seen be a extremely efficient position for fantasy football. Just look at Hollywood Brown historically, even putting up great numbers last year with Bateman in the offense with a lower target share than Mark Andrews. So Hurts and Bateman are the picks for me. These are some big upside shots, and these are the swings that I want to take in these mid-rounds and really just fade that RB dead zone. I don't want to go with a Chase Edmonds who might be in a committee, even though we're both really high on him and we're expecting big things on the Miami offense. Just felt like a little bit of reach of the ADP when you had Bateman on the board, you had Juju, you had other names still there, and then it seemed a little bit too early for that Pollard, Sanders. I'm not touching CEH with a 10-foot pole tier. But, Alex, after I took Rashad Bateman, we saw a ton of receivers go. We saw Adam Thielen, Elijah Moore, Hunter Renfrow go over Juju Smith-Schuster, Brandon Ayuk, DeAndre Hopkins, probably a little bit rich for my blood there, Devonta Smith, Allen Lazard. I think people are finally coming around to all the takes that we've been dropping on Lazard throughout the offseason. We also saw Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers go. And right away, as soon as you see Russell Wilson go, Dak Prescott immediately becomes an option you have to consider because he'll be the last name in the tier. But, Alex, who are you going with at this 6-7 turn?
Yeah, it's a bummer because I took Gabe Davis, a more volatile receiver, or, less proven receiver, and A.J. Dillon thinking, one of these receivers is going to get back to me. Then we just saw a massive run. So that hurts. Guys like Lazard, Devontae Smith, Ayuk, Juju, those are the guys I was hoping I could get. I didn't think Bateman would fall. But it is a bummer that all those guys went because I could really use a receiver on this turn. And I will also say, I love Rashad Bateman. So just because I took Gabe Davis over Bateman does not mean I'm not excited about his outlook for this season. I just think Gabe Davis has a higher ceiling and more upside for 2022. So this is tough. And I think at the receiver spot, this is a full PPR league. There's a couple names there. There's Christian Kirk, Drake London, Kadarius Toney, Tyler Lockett. And I'm going to be honest with you. If I did not have, a lack of depth and some unproven receivers, especially in Gabe Davis, I'd probably be looking at Drake London here and just go for that upside in the unknown with the rookie. But I think I can circle back in 2 rounds and grab a George Pickens or a Jahan Dotson or one of these rookie wide receivers that was drafted in round 1 with upside. So I'm actually going to play it safe with this first pick, and I'm going to go with Christian Kirk. I think T-Law is set for a big, big step forward in 2022. He's looked a lot better in the preseason. Christian Kirk has been targeted early and often from Lawrence and some of the camp that we've seen and some of the preseason games where they've both been active. So I'm going to go with the guy who is a PPR machine, can get deep as well for big plays, and who got paid a ton of money to go to Jacksonville and should immediately step in as their number one wide receiver and should lead this team in targets as well. So I'm going to go Christian Kirk, and instead of investing in Jacksonville in round 2 with Travis Etienne, I'm going to invest in the Jacksonville offense with their wide receiver 1 several rounds later, and go ahead and snag Christian Kirk with that first pick. And now with my second pick, I think there are some running backs that are very interesting here. You can never have enough running backs in a 14-team league. So if this was an actual league I was in, I think Chase Edmonds would be in major consideration for me here. But I do think because some of these upside quarterbacks have started to go off the board, there's really 2, maybe 3 left for me. Tom Brady, Dak Prescott, and Trey Lance. And I'm afraid if I don't pick one of these 3 guys by the time it gets back to me on the next turn, I'm then looking at the Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr tier, which at that point, I do really feel like it's a step down. So between these 3 guys, it feels weird to do this, but I'm going to kind of lean into this. I have these old veterans in Christian McCaffrey and James Conner running back, so I'm going to take some upside shots at every other position. And I'm going to go with Trey Lance over Dak Prescott over Tom Brady.
Ooh.
Yeah, Brady, he's lost Gronk this year. Godwin is banged up. I know they got Julio Jones, but they've lost some pieces on that offense. AB is obviously gone. Dak Prescott lost Michael Gallup, who might not be back until, midway through the season. They lost Mark
Russell
Cooper.
Gage is hurt, by the way, as well in Tampa.
So these guys, have lost weapons. Tom Brady obviously is not a mobile quarterback. Dak, we saw him step back from a mobility perspective and a rushing yards perspective last season. Now he was coming off the ankle injury, and they've said he's going to run it more this year. But someone we know is going to run the ball a ton is Trey Lance. So I'm going to lean into the potential upside of that position. And if Trey Lance completely busts, I'll stream, Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins off the waiver wire for the rest of the season. But Trey Lance is the only player that was left on the board there that I actually feel like has top 5 upside. Maybe Brady can get into the top 5 if he throws 40-plus touchdowns again. But I'm going to lean into that rushing upside because Trey Lance can throw 200 yards a game and still give you 20, 25 fantasy points because of what he can do with his legs.
Wow. And you caught it perfectly because after you took Lance, we saw a pretty decent QB run. Wow. We saw Brady go, Dak Prescott go, Matthew Stafford go, Derek Carr go. So that was really the last, I guess Fields is probably the slightly lower down version, but no one's excited about the weaponry. No one's excited about the situation. No one's excited about the coaching staff in Chicago. So Fields can be a waiver name if he pops week 1, if he runs the ball 20 times, maybe you start looking at him then. So even though it was a little bit ballsy, I like the upside swing on Lance. And now we're getting into get your guy season where the ADPs break down. It's just who's on the board, best player available. And you want to shoot for the moon a little bit more at this range. But one thing I'm really big on is making sure that you have enough receiver depth, especially in these 14-team leagues, to be able to plug a guy into your flex and actually have a decent bench spot starter if you need it. If, God forbid, Allen Robinson goes down, Bateman busters out, or Jamar Chase gets hurt, going up for one of these 50-50 balls, then at least I'll have some depth to plug in. So I'm looking at receiver, but there's also another guy on the board that just randomly fell. I don't know if this is a Fantasy Pros mock draft. And this is a guy that you and I are not even high on, but TJ Hawkinson.
I was wondering if you'd bring him up because I saw him there as well. Yeah,
he's still there. And I thought you might consider him on that last pick. Goddard went in the 6th round. Ertz, who's actually hurt right now with a calf injury. They're saying he might be fine for week 1. I'm just a little bit nervous on Ertz at the moment. I would love to see him get back at least into the camp practice field before we start drafting him, because he's kind of the last name I like at tight end, unless I'm just punting the position to Hayden Hurst and David Njoku and Irv Smith, guys like that. So Hawkinson just being a value, we don't even have to get into Hawkinson takes. If he falls to the back of the 7th round in a 14-team PPR redraft league, you pull the trigger every time.
Yep.
And on top of it too, even if it wasn't the ADP value, just look at the other tight ends that have already been taken. So Hawkinson's a value here just by the fact that he's still on the board, and he's really one of the last known commodities at tight end. And let's see who's here at receiver. I like Kadarius Toney. I like Chase Claypool. I love Chris Olave. And not much has shifted with this RP dead zone. Chase Edmonds is still there. He's looking like an incredible value as well. really like Ramondre Stevenson, really like Melvin Gordon, love James Cook, Dameon Pierce, grabbing them on all my rosters, but it feels a little bit too early to go that deep into my bag at running back at this point in the draft. I'm going to go with Chase Edmonds just because I do think he's a value. He's the last guy right now that I'm seeing on the board that's in a clear one situation. I don't know if Sanders, maybe you could say he's the 1A, but there's a lot of question marks with that Eagles backfield. He didn't do anything last year other than get hurt and put up 0 touchdowns, even though he ran pretty efficient. So I'm a little bit suspect on Sanders right now. And it kind of goes back to what we've talked about in our dynasty conversations with this Antonio Gibson thing. If you're not setting yourself up to get a big contract extension, you're probably going to slowly get phased out of the league if you don't put up numbers at the running back position as a rookie. And that's scaring me a little bit for Miles Sanders. But Edmonds is in an offense that we expect to take a step up in Miami. I think Tua is going to have plenty of check down volume there in that offense. And I like Edmonds as a rusher. He was explosive on the ground when he was asked to do a lot in Arizona. He has a versatile skill set. And this is just a guy that I want to invest in because I think he's being criminally underrated right now. I think he should be going, which thankfully Fantasy Pros has the proper ADP here. I think he should be going ahead of Tony Pollard, but you don't see that in a lot of draft kits and a lot of public rankings that are posted. Alex, what are your thoughts on Edmonds here and specifically Edmonds versus Pollard?
I think well done. I mean, it also depends on what you're going for. If Edmonds was going to be, if you were deciding between your running back 4 in this spot, I might make the argument towards Pollard because you just want that upside play who can crack your lineup and become better than the guys you already have. But as your RB3, Edmonds is going to have value, and he's going to be an efficient player. He's probably not going to get 20 touches a week, but through his PPR ability, his pass-catching ability, he's a perfect plug-and-play guy, especially with Brees on your roster, who could take a little bit longer to get ramped up. So I think you made the right call, and I think well done with Hockenson and Edmonds on that turn. 2 incredible values in this draft. And right before we started recording, we were talking about how this year the approach is like just take the best freaking players, right? Like, obviously, the later in the draft you go, and as your starters are blocked in and things like that, it becomes like roster construction is less important. It's like take the best player available. But even in a build where you're heavy on receiver early, or there's a great QB that falls or a tight end that falls, like take the best players in the best situations in these drafts. Like don't overthink it. Don't lock yourself into certain positions in certain rounds. Just take the best guys that are available. And we don't even like TJ Hockenson this year, but at the 7-14, a smash home run pick, set it and forget it tight end. And then Edmonds just a great value as well. So I think perfect job kind of setting that example for just don't overthink it. Just take the best players. And it's like super dumbed down. Like that could be a joke, like take the best players and you'll win, but it's true. And people overthink it every single year.
And that's what we're talking about, where we're seeing Antonio Gibson. It didn't happen in this draft, but you've been spinning the wheels on underdog, and you're smashing on Gibson in the 9th round because that's an incredible value, and he is a good player. He's put up phenomenal numbers first 2 years in the league, has an amazing prospect profile. He's getting it done in camp through the air, even though he is playing on the punt team, things like that. Just take good players. I've been kicking myself for a year now. Last year, I skipped on Chris Godwin and Mike Evans in every single draft because I was looking at projections for the whole course of the season and thought there's no way both of them can be wide receiver 1s, but that's where both of them were going, right? They were going at that 12, 13, 14 range. And so I thought, well, it's got to be one or the other, so I'm just going to pass on both. That was the wrong mindset because Mike Evans is good. Chris Godwin is good. Just take good players in good situations. They both had Brady. They both had the pass volume. So we're saying the same thing here with T. Higgins. And that's exactly kind of the mindset with me with Chase Edmonds, where I just think he's good. And like we talked about earlier, before we even hit start on the draft board, you got to either start these runs or grab the last name available. And it looks like I started a massive RB run because after I went Edmonds, it went Sanders, Pollard, Ramondre Stevenson, Dameon Pierce, Kenneth Walker, Michael Carter, and James Cook. I'm sure you're wincing at some of the names getting taken off the board. I'm sure you would have loved to have a James Cook as an option at this range. Certainly Pollard or Stevenson would have been fun as well. But who are you looking at now at this 8-9 turn? You already have Lance at QB, no tight end, and running backs and receiver depth the rest of the way.
Yeah, and a 14 team at this point, especially being on the turn, I'm going to go ahead and look to the tight end spot because there's one guy in a PPR league that I really like above the others, and there's still 5 teams in this draft without a tight end. So if I don't take him here, he's probably not getting back to me, and it's Cole Kmet on the Chicago Bears. I know we're worried about the offense. I know we don't expect much, in terms of touchdown upside, but Cole Kmet, I mean, he's going to be their number 2 target in this offense. Last season, 60 receptions for 612 yards and did not score a single touchdown. So that is an extreme anomaly to have 0 touchdowns on 93 targets. I think Kmet could step up. I mean, Allen Robinson is gone. All they have is Darnell Mooney, and they're having trouble even getting these names off the street healthy and into preseason games and into camp. So he's going to see 100-plus targets this season. If he adds a couple touchdowns onto what he even did last year, he could be a 70-reception, 700-yard, 3-4 touchdown guy, and in a PPR league give you a tremendous floor. So I'm going to lock in.
And you know what I see from Kmet, not to steal your thunder here, but Kmet is kind of in that situation we saw last year from Hockenson, where he showed flashes and the depth was cleared up. The offense might be gross, but they're guys that you can get at value. You and I don't love Hockenson because he's getting inflated up these draft boards, but we loved him last year because he was going in this 8th, 9th, 10th round. It really was that last name that you could bank on in your drafts, even though a lot of people were fading him because the situation wasn't sexy. Oh, the Lions are going to be terrible. Kmet is this year's version of that because he was top 10 last year in targets, deep targets, and was 11th in air yards. So all the peripheral metrics are there for Kmet to be that breakout tight end this year. And historically, tight ends break out in year 3. Now, that's not a tremendous hit rate or probabilistic number that we look at, but that is the year they most likely take that step if they're going to do it.
Yeah, so with my second pick, I have 3 running backs, 3 wide receivers. And to your point earlier, I want to have, these receivers are going to be cycling through my lineup much more frequently with that flex spot likely being taken up by a receiver. And I only have T. Higgins, Gabe Davis, and Christian Kirk. So I want a little bit more help there. And there's a couple names on the board I really like. Chase Claypool, Russell Gage, and Jacoby Myers are the 3 names I'm looking at here. And I think, man, this is a tough one, but I think I'm going to go ahead and lock in Jacoby Myers here. Actually, no, I'm going to go Chase Claypool. I took Christian Kirk on the last turn, someone who is a safer PPR type guy. Jacoby Myers, I don't think presents that much upside. Where Chase Claypool, this boom bust name, who knows who's going to be the quarterback? Trubisky, Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett's looked really good, by the way. So I'm going to go ahead and go with Chase Claypool and hope that he can get back, to what he did in his rookie season in terms of touchdowns and just get this upside name where in good matchups with decent over-unders, I can plug him into my flex and hope for that big touchdown bomb and for a big play on the week. So
Chase
I'm going to go
Claypool was a name that we were talking about a lot in our last draft. That was on a different platform because he was going super, super late. No one wanted to touch him in that last mock. And this one, looks like he is a little bit higher up the board, but I tweeted out the other day, you can follow us at Double Move Sport on Twitter, just asking, is Chase Claypool a super cheap buy in redraft and dynasty? Because we know he has the athleticism, he has the size, he's played on the outside. There's rumors he might keep moving in the slot this year. Then I put Pickens out wide. But he had over 100 targets his first 2 seasons, over 850 receiving yards both seasons. He's been used as a rusher. People don't talk about this. Double-digit carries for Chase Claypool both years of his career. And then if you look at the Steelers, they've run 84% of their pass plays in a 3 wide receiver set. That's top 5 in the NFL. They're top 3 in the NFL. They're 3rd behind the Rams and the Bengals in terms of 3 wide receiver sets. So if you look at who are the top 3 receivers in Pittsburgh, it's Deontay, Claypool, and Pickens. So I think all 3 of them are actually going to get significant snap shares. They're going to be up there a lot. I think they're going to be moved around the formation. And Claypool could be that name that is that tried and true known commodity as Pickens starts to get ramped up at game speed. We know he's coming off an injury that he sustained in college. So, look, I think Pickens will probably hit the ground running, but there's no guarantee of that. And so I love Claypool as a super late upside name, especially for your roster build. It's a very smart decision, in my opinion, going with Claypool over Jacoby Myers because Jacoby Myers can be found on the waiver wire all season long.
It's very true. So after Chase Claypool, we did see those other receivers I was considering and one tight end that, I thought might go as well. So we saw Garrett Wilson, Melvin Gordon, Dawson Knox went at the tight end spot, then James Robinson, Jahan Dotson at the 906. That's interesting. Ronald Jones, Russell Gage, Jacoby Myers, Michael Gallup, Sky Moore, Darrell Henderson, and Brian Robinson. Stef, 914 in the 1001. Who are you looking at here?
So a mantra I've been following aggressively all season is actually a study that was done by RotoViz called Win the Flex. Essentially, long story short, I'll summarize it. You want to have 5 receivers in the first 10 rounds because it's much more likely that a running back in the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th round breaks out or gets to play because of an injury or gets moved up a depth chart. Last year, you had names getting sold for a king's ransom, especially in these 14-team leagues where, hey, it looks like James Robinson, after ETN goes down, he's going to be the guy mortgaging their essentially entire season and all their depth to go and get a James Robinson, right? That happens every single year where there's these late round RB breakouts or a guy gets hurt. And so with that being the case, I don't want to rely on, hitting a diamond in the rough at receiver. And I don't want to wait on a name like a Michael Gallup, like a Jameson Williams to play later in the year. I don't necessarily want a DJ Chark that could get phased out down the stretch. There's ambiguity around it. But let's just see who's on the board. I'd love to go double receiver at this point. And even though I just dogged DJ Chark, I do like what he's going to bring to the table earlier in the year. You and I have talked about him as a value. Let me just spot check some of their positions.
I'm surprised you're not going George Pickens here.
Yeah, Pickens is definitely in consideration. I just went through the whole rant on the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't need a quarterback. I don't need a tight end because I have Hawkinson. I have Jalen Hurts. So I'm going to go Pickens and Chark and just get some upside receivers that I think could pop one and later down the year with Pickens or early in the year with Chark because Chark is going to be the only guy who's going to be able to stretch the field consistently. Jared Goff has aired it out at times. We've seen him have a productive deep threat with Brandon Cooks. And for all the reasons we like Hawkinson, where they're going to be in these pass-heavy game scripts, they have one of the best O-lines in the league on paper right now. I feel really good about going Chark here just with a hot start to the year. And he's a guy that I'd love to flex. Maybe he breaks out. Maybe something happens with the Jameson Williams situation and his recovery period is taking a little bit longer than most would expect. Then I have a guy that I can plug in at my flex spot any given week based on the matchup, based on Detroit is trending. And if he's terrible, well, oh well. It's a 10th round pick in a 14-team league. I can churn him and pick up other names that are looking good at the start of the season. And after I went Chark, we saw Julio, Jarvis Landry, a bunch of handcuff running backs, Gainwell, Alexander Madison, J.D. McKissick, Khalil Herbert, Isaiah Spiller. A couple tight ends went in Freiermuth, Hunter Henry, and Mike Gesicki. So at the 10-11 turn, what are the options here for you, knowing that you have QB locked up, you have tight end locked up, you have 3 running backs, 4 receivers? Who are you going with?
Yeah, kind of same principle. I want another receiver on this roster, and I'll probably follow it up with a running back as well. So technically, it's the 10, 14, and 11-01, but to officially have 5 receivers in the first rounds, I'll take my receiver first. And there are still some interesting names here. I think Rondale Moore is interesting if he actually does step up and is a full-time member of this offense while DeAndre Hopkins is suspended. Maybe those first 6 weeks are an opportunity for him. Kenny Golladay, I'm not too excited about. I'm convinced that he's just not it at this point, and the offense in New York could be questionable as well. But there is a name that I've loved for a while now, and now I'm starting to see some hype. He had a great preseason game. It's Nico Collins on the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans have Brandon Cooks. Shout out to you repping the Texans today for this Nico Collins pick. But Nico Collins is their only other target outside of Brandon Cooks. Nico Collins could be a 100-plus target player this season, and he's straight up good. He's jumping over guys in these preseason games for touchdowns. In camp, he's making so many plays. I've seen tons of camp highlights for Nico Collins. It looks like Davis Mills loves throwing him the football as well. So you mentioned the deeper you go in these drafts, the harder it is to find these diamond in the rough receivers that are going to absolutely step up and break out. But with Nico Collins, he is a starter already, and he's going into his second season. We often do see receivers really step up in year 2. So with Davis Mills hopefully taking a step forward, with Nico Collins hopefully taking a step forward, and with the opportunity to be a full snap share player and a starter, I like Nico Collins as a guy who could break out if the Houston offense isn't absolutely atrocious. So I'm just going to lock in Nico Collins for that potential upside.
Love it.
And with my second pick, I'm kind of going to keep the running back handcuff run going, if you will, because I have a ton of upside on McCaffrey, James Conner, AJ Dillon. So I'm just going to go with a player that I don't need to start every week. But if he ends up getting an opportunity as the one, he should go absolutely nuclear. It's another rookie that I've really, really liked. It's Rachaad White. There's tons of rookies here that I like. Tyler Algier, I think, is interesting. Even Zamir White has some handcuff appeal now that Kenyon Drake has been cut. But I'm going to go Rachaad White because I think that role in Tampa, Rachaad White's skill set for that offense makes the most sense and has the most upside. So I'm just going to take a shot on him, see what happens. Most weeks, he's probably not going to get me anything. But if Leonard Fournette misses time and Rachaad White can beat out Keyshawn Vaughn, who's done nothing in 2+ seasons, I think he could be an every week start if he gets the opportunity. So I love the talent of Rachaad White out of Arizona State, and he is going to be my pick in the 11th round.
So last three picks for me, last 2 rounds of the draft starting up here. And this is essentially where you want to just go with upside running backs, right? The guys that could take over if the guy in front of them gets hurt. Wow. I might circle back on one more wide receiver, but running backs. What is this? The 11th round was all handcuff RBs except for Kenny Golladay. Literally, the entire 11th round. So you started an insane running back run. I may not even be able to get a running back that I even like at this range in the draft.
Let me read off these names. So it was Nyheim Hines, Jamal Williams. You look while I read these names. Nyheim Hines, Jamal Williams, Algier. Then we saw Kenny G. Then it was Mostert, Marlon Mack, Darrell Williams, Deontay Foreman, Sony Michel, Gus Edwards, Mark Ingram, Zamir White. And Steph, I want to throw something out here. Gus Edwards, if he got back to me, I was going to take him because our leagues have IR spots. We have one IR spot. And if you get to the second to last or the last round of your draft, just snag Gus Edwards, immediately throw him on your IR, and then pick someone up off waivers and let him sit there for 4 weeks. And you're going to have first dibs on him when he comes back. So just kind of approach about there. Jamison Williams, Gus Edwards. If for some reason they're making it to your last or second to last round and you have an IR, pick them up, slide them down, and just pick someone up off waivers because these last couple rounds are all dart throws anyway.
They're all dart throws, but I'm going to make a pick that's very similar to your Nico Collins pick. Same mindset, almost the same situation where he's the outside number 2, where there's a monster slot guy who's going to take a 30% plus target share potentially. And for me, that's Jalen Tolbert. I can't believe Jalen Tolbert is still on the board, was an absolute monster at Southern Alabama in college, 4-year player, but his last 2 seasons did absolutely nasty things on the football field. Gallup is going to start the year on the pup, probably won't be back until their bye week, which is middle of the season. I'm hoping Tolbert can actually break out and actually solidify himself as a starter in the Dallas Cowboys offense. I know Dalton Schultz will probably be number 2 in targets, but there's a non-zero chance that Tolbert is that guy. And that Michael Gallup role has been noteworthy in fantasy league. So I'm going to go Tolbert. I'm going to go against my strategy just because I love the value on Tolbert at this range. Other names here, obviously, like Rondé Moore's still there. It's pretty crazy. He is a value at this point. Just doesn't fit the level of upside that I'm looking for. I'd rather go for big body outside X receivers versus the more explosive, smaller slot guys at this range when I'm just looking for upside. And I'm going to go with, the camp darling of 2022, Isaiah Pacheco.
Gosh, I knew you were going to do that.
He's been like the odds of him breaking out as, was it 7th round, 6th round, 7th round?
7th round.
7th round in the NFL draft. I mean, the hit rate is like cringeworthy if you look at it, but Pacheco's been playing with the ones. He played with the ones in a preseason game, and you and I liked his skill set coming out as a prospect. We didn't expect the Chiefs to pick him up. We didn't expect him to get this level of hype at all. And I think in a lot of leagues he is being overvalued. But he's one of those guys that you can just take him. If he ends up being nothing, if Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the guy, or it's just a nasty committee, which it probably will end up being in Kansas City, I'll take Pacheco and hope he can play like a Jerick McKinnon plus type of role, especially with that lack of receiver depth now that they have in Kansas City. And after Pacheco, saw a couple more. Kirk Cousins finally went. What an insane value on Kirk Cousins. Eno Benjamin went in this round. I was also eyeing him. Don't draft Kenyon Drake in your leagues. He just got cut. We'll see if he gets picked up, but not a guy you should be investing in right now. Last 2 picks for you, Alex. Let's keep it short and sweet. 12-14, 13-01. Who you got?
A little upset because I got sniped on David Njoku, but with Cole Kmet as this low upside, should be a good PPR guy, tight end, I like circling back to the tight end spot with my last pick and just taking an explosive name. So David Njoku's a guy I normally target. He went 2 picks in front of me. So Alberto is there, but I'm going to go Irv Smith. This is another guy who's injured right now. He's expected to be back for week 1. And we're hearing that the Vikings offense is going to be more pass-friendly this year. There's been a drumbeat about Irv Smith breaking out for 2 seasons now, and last year he got hurt. So this could be the Irv Smith season. If he misses week 1, like I just talked about with Gus Edwards, I'll slide him on my IR spot until he comes back because he should be back early. And I'll just hold him for a couple weeks because he is a hyper-athletic, explosive tight end on a good offense that could flash. So I'm just going to take Irv Smith. Like, I'll take him over a Boston Scott. Like, what are my other options here? Like these deep running backs, these deep receivers. So I'll take a tight end that I know is going to be used. And then back on the clock, man, there's a lot of receivers I like. You know, Josh Palmer, Marvin Jones, KJ Osborne, Paris Campbell. There's tons of names. But to that point, like, these are waiver wire cycle guys that I can always go and pick up, where running backs are a little bit tougher to come by. So I'm just going to take my shot on a running back here. Ooh, it's brutal. Boston Scott's there, Jeff Wilson, Trey Sermon, Jerick McKinnon, Dearness Johnson. Man. I was thinking about TDP, but I'm going to go TDP. I'm just going to lock in TDP. Yeah. Day 2 pick.
I will tell you, NFL insider Jordan Schultz just reported on NBC Sports Edge that Chargers wide receiver Josh Palmer is in line for an expanded role.
Yeah, I like Palmer
in LA, so he's going to be a priority waiver guy if he balls out week 1. Can certainly play that Keenan Allen role, but yeah, the TDP pick was the right pick, especially for your running back depth. I mean, you would have finished this draft with only 4 RBs if you didn't go with Tyrion Davis-Price. So I think that was the right play. And look, there's no guarantee Elijah Mitchell's going to be healthy for week 1, much less the majority.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, I can't believe Alberto was there. Last pick. This is Mr. Irrelevant. Who do I like here? Oh, man. There's not even like one single name that I necessarily love right now at RB.
It's brutal. 14 teams, man.
Okay. Yeah, this is the brutal part of a 14-team league is the last 2 rounds. I mean, it's just dart throws. Part of me would have gone Hassan Haskins if we did this draft a month ago, but now I'm worried about Julius Chestnut taking over. So I'm just going to go with another upside receiver because I really don't see paths to like sustained volume from anybody on this list. Like even like Dearness Johnson, he's older. I know he flashed last year, but even if Chubb goes down and Kareem Hunt gets cut, they'll probably bring somebody in. Jerome Ford was taking the draft. I just don't see any name here being that like, hey, yeah, we're going to give this guy keys to the kingdom if he's the one on the depth chart. I think they're more likely to go and bring in a Kenyon Drake off the street, another name that's there. Mike Davis would probably be the one.
Ooh.
With Gus Edwards just getting put on the pup right before we hit record. And that's actually what I'm going to do. I know.
That's gross.
It was gross.
That's disgusting.
Okay, man, it's gross, okay? But if Dobbins, if he ends up being rushed back or he's not ready for week 1, I get the Ravens RB1 with the last pick, and if he sucks, I'll just churn him. The other name I was going to say was Wan'Dale Robinson. And so let's circle back, look at our rosters. Mike Davis, corner of my eye, just said, screw it, let's do it. But I really like Wan'Dale Robinson for that slot as well. And guys, we want to ask you all, who do you think had the better roster in the comments? I think that's one of the most fun things about doing drafts where we're both doing separate teams is comparing them at the end of the day. I'll go through mine first, and Alex, you can hit on yours. At running back, I have DeAndre Swift, Breece Hall, Chase Edmonds, Isaiah Pacheco, and Mike Davis. Kind of same thing as you, where I only had 4 running backs. So I needed to take that Mike Davis, as gross as that pick was. And then at receiver, I have Jamar Chase, Allen Robinson, Rashad Bateman, DJ Chark, George Pickens, Jalen Tolbert. So a lot of upside names, a lot of depth pieces, and guys with a high upside like Jamar Chase, like A-Rob, like Rashad Bateman. At tight end, got an amazing value on TJ Hawkinson. Just get some stability there. I don't need to grind the waiver wire looking for the next Dan Arnold like I had to last year. And I could rest easy at night knowing that I have a guy that I'll probably circle back to the well on as my fantasy MVP. Spoiler alert for episodes coming out over the next couple of weeks. But Jalen Hurts at quarterback has to be the guy. I've been leading that hype train. And I'd put him over Kyler Murray right now, even though he's typically going behind Murray in draft. So I feel really good about this roster. If I could change anything, maybe it was, hey, I could have potentially waited on a guy like Hurts because Kirk Cousins went in the 12th. Maybe feel a little bit better about my running backs, but in 14-team leagues, no one's going to have exceptional RB depth. And if you look through these rosters right now, there's nobody that you look at their RB room and are like, they're absolutely 100% set. Even this like team 3 that went Melvin Gordon, James Cook, who I love coming out of that RB dead zone, their other running backs are Zeke and Josh Jacobs, and that doesn't necessarily get you overly excited. So, Alex, go through your roster, and I'd love to hear your 2 cents on mine.
Yeah, I love you. I love your squad, honestly. I think there's a good mix of upside, a good mix of depth, a good mix of veterans that should hold down the fort early while your younger guys are breaking out. You got some good values. So that's a roster that can win. Obviously, you don't win your league at the draft. You can set yourself up to be good, and I think you definitely did that with this team. My roster, I've got Trey Lance at quarterback. My running backs are Christian McCaffrey and James Conner. Receivers are T. Higgins and Gabe Davis. Tight end is Cole Kmet, and my flex is A.J. Dillon or Christian Kirk. So those are my first 2 bench guys, and I've got Chase Claypool and Nico Collins rounding out the receivers, Rashad White and TDP as some running back handcuffs for some upside on my bench, and Irv Smith as an upside tight end. So I like this roster. I think, I obviously have a lot of volatility. I think there's not one pick I would change, but I would not necessarily draft on this thin of ice, if you will, because Trey Lance, unproven quarterback. We got Christian McCaffrey and James Conner, 2 of the most injury-prone running backs in the league. You got Gabe Davis, who is super unproven. You got A.J. Dillon, who's technically the team's second most valuable running back. And then you've got Christian Kirk on a new team, Irv Smith, who's hurt, a couple of rookies. So a lot of unproven guys on this team. This is the ultimate boom bust, like go all in and try to win a championship roster. Hopefully with this team, a couple guys would hit, and then I could circle to the waiver wire, make some trades to pick up some more stable players. But yeah, I like this team as well. I think if just a couple of these guys with question marks hit, this team would have enough upside to make a push into the playoffs.
Well, if you like what we do here on the channel, if you want to join the conversation with us, post your rosters, whether they're mocks or actual drafts that you're completing, post them in our Discord channel. There's a free link to that down below. Appreciate you if you're still listening and watching with us. We'll be pumping up videos on the channel, our fantasy MVPs, our breakouts, our busts. We're going to start flag planting here at Double Move Sports. We appreciate y'all listening and watching, and we'll see you next time. Peace.